The stars burned in the distance as Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon. His ship was small compared to the massive alien vessels that filled the view screen, but it was humanity's first real step into the galaxy beyond, Earth. The crew had been traveling for 3 months, following signals that suggested intelligent life somewhere in this region of space. What they found was war. The battle raged across an entire star system. Ships the size of cities fired weapons that could crack planets in half. Beams of pure energy cut through the darkness while swarms of smaller craft darted between the giants like angry insects. The New Horizon stayed hidden behind a dead moon, watching the destruction unfold. "Sir, I'm picking up 2 distinct ship designs," said Lieutenant Kate Johnson from her station. She was young but sharp, the kind of officer who noticed details others missed. "The crystalline ones use energy weapons. Exclusively. The organic-looking ship seemed to prefer biological attacks." Jake nodded, studying the tactical display. The crystalline ships were beautiful in their own way, like living jewels that pulsed with inner light. Their hulls seemed to be made of some kind of advanced crystal that bent and focused energy into devastating beams. When they fired, space itself seemed to sing with harmonic frequencies. The other ships looked alive. Their hulls moved and shifted like muscle tissue, and instead of energy beams, they launched what looked like spores or seeds that exploded into acidic clouds. Some of their weapons actually grew during flight, becoming larger and more deadly as they approached their targets. The battle had been going on for hours with no clear winner. Both sides seemed equally matched, equally determined to destroy each other. Jake had seen enough Earth wars to recognize a stalemate when he saw one. "Captain, incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Beth Harper. "It's from one of the crystal ships. They're speaking English?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "Put it through." The view screen flickered and showed a being that was barely recognizable as alive. It looked like a collection of living crystals arranged in a roughly humanoid shape, constantly shifting and changing color. When it spoke, its voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Unknown vessel. I am Crystal Singer Vexthera of the Zephyrian Collective. You will identify yourself and declare your allegiance. Are you allies of the Korthak disease, or will you join the righteous cause of bringing order to this galaxy?" Before Jake could respond, another signal cut through. This one came from one of the organic ships, and the being on screen was definitely insectoid. It had multiple arms, compound eyes, and mandibles that clicked when it spoke. "Primitive ship. I am War Prime Skraxith of the Korthak Empire. You will submit to Korthak rule or be consumed. The Crystal Singers are weak and dying. Join the strong and live." Jake looked at his small crew. They had come out here to make first contact, to represent humanity in the galaxy, but this was not what anyone back on Earth had expected. He made a decision that would change everything. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel New Horizon. We come in peace and seek understanding. Perhaps we could discuss ending this conflict rather than continuing it." Both alien commanders made sounds that might have been laughter. Vexithara's crystals chimed mockingly while Skraxith's mandibles clicked in what was clearly amusement. "Human," Vexithara said. "Your primitive ship barely qualifies as spaceworthy. This war has raged for 300 of your years. It will not end until the Korthak plague is cleansed from the galaxy." "Soft shell," Skraxith added. "Your species is nothing. This war began before your world had fire. It will end only when the Crystal Singers are ground to dust." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. 300 years of war? He looked around, the system again with new eyes. What he had taken for natural asteroid fields were actually the remains of destroyed worlds. The debris floating through space wasn't just metal and rock. It was the remnants of entire civilizations. "How many have died?" Jake asked quietly. "Numbers are meaningless," Vexithara replied. "The Zephyrian way is perfection through order. The Korthak represent chaos that must be eliminated." "Death is growth," Skraxith said. "The weak die so the strong may expand. Your species will choose now, serve Korthak or join the dead." Jake realized he was looking at madness. Both species were so locked into their conflict that they couldn't see the destruction they were causing. They had forgotten why they were fighting, if they ever really knew. All that mattered now was the fight itself. "We need time to consider," Jake said carefully. "Humanity is new to galactic politics." "You have one of your days," Vexthara said. "Choose the path of light and order." "You have until this world turns once more," Scraxith agreed. "Choose strength or choose death." Both transmissions ended, leaving the new horizon alone among the stars. The battle continued around them as if their conversation had never happened. Ships died in brilliant explosions while others were slowly consumed by biological weapons that ate through their hulls. "Sir," said Engineer Tony Martinez from the back of the bridge, "I've been scanning the wreckage. Some of these ship designs are hundreds of years old, but they're still using the same basic weapons and tactics. It's like they've been fighting the same battle over and over again." Jake turned to study the young man. Tony was brilliant with technology, the kind of engineer who could fix anything and improve most things. "What do you mean?" "Look at the patterns, Captain. The crystal ships always attack from the same angles using the same energy frequencies. The bug ships always respond with the same biological countermeasures. It's like watching a dance that both sides have memorized." Kate looked up from her station. "He's right, sir. I've been tracking their movements. They're completely predictable. Both sides know exactly what the other is going to do." Jake felt something click in his mind. A war that had gone on for 3 centuries, with both sides using the same tactics, over and over again. They weren't really trying to win anymore. They were just going through the motions of a conflict that had become their entire way of life. "Set course for Earth," Jake ordered. "Best possible speed." "Sir?" Beth asked. "What about their ultimatum?" Jake smiled grimly as he watched another ship die in the distance. "We're going to give them an answer they're not expecting. But first, Earth needs to know what's coming." The New Horizon turned away from the battle and jumped into hyperspace, carrying news that would change humanity's destiny. Behind them, the war continued as it had for 300 years, unchanging and seemingly eternal. But Jake Morrison had seen something the warring aliens had missed. In their perfect, predictable patterns there were gaps, opportunities for someone clever enough to exploit them. The galaxy's greatest war was about to meet humanity's greatest strength, the ability to think outside the box. The emergency meeting took place in the deepest levels of the Global Defense Command. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez looked tired as she reviewed the footage from the New Horizon for the 3rd time. Around the table sat the most important military and scientific minds on Earth, all trying to process what they were seeing. 300 years, General Pete Collins muttered, shaking his head. "These aliens have been at war longer than America has existed." Dr. Amy Watson paused the video at a frame showing the alien battle formations. As Earth's leading expert on alien biology, she had been studying the footage for days. "What bothers me isn't how long they've been fighting. It's how they're fighting, Commander." Rick Davis leaned forward. He was in charge of human military intelligence, and his job was to find weaknesses in any potential enemy. "Explain." Amy stood and walked to the large display screen. She pointed to the crystalline ships. "The Zephyrians use pure energy weapons. Every attack is based on focused light, heat, or electromagnetic radiation. They've perfected this technology over centuries." She switched to show the organic vessels. "The Korthak use biological warfare exclusively. Acid, toxins, living weapons that adapt and grow. They're masters of organic technology." "So they're both incredibly advanced," Admiral Rodriguez said. "That's what worries me." "No, that's what gives us hope," Amy replied. "They're not advanced anymore. They're specialized to the point of blindness. The Zephyrians have no defense against anything that isn't energy-based. The Korthak can't handle attacks that aren't biological or chemical." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Jake Morrison, who had been quiet since giving his initial report, finally spoke up. "Dr. Watson is right. I watched them fight for hours. It was like watching a chess game where both players only know 5 moves." General Collins frowned. "But our technology is primitive compared to theirs. Our best weapons are kinetic, bullets, missiles, explosives, things they probably mastered and abandoned centuries ago." Exactly, Amy said with growing excitement. They've forgotten about kinetic weapons. To them, throwing a rock is beneath consideration. But what if we threw really big rocks really fast? Commander Davis was already working on his tablet, running calculations. Our railguns could punch through both types of armor. Their shields are designed to stop energy or biological attacks, not solid projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. It's not just weapons, Jake added. Their entire way of thinking is locked into patterns. They fight at the same times in the same places, using the same tactics. They've turned war into a ritual. Admiral Rodriguez stood and walked to the ley, large star map on the wall. Red markers showed the known extent of the alien war. This conflict is spreading. Our long-range sensors show battles in 17 different star systems. If it continues expanding, it will reach human space within 50 years. Unless we stop it, General Collins said grimly. How? Dr. Watson asked. We have maybe 100 armed ships. They have thousands. Lieutenant Kate Johnson, who had accompanied Jake back to Earth, cleared her throat. She was the youngest person in the room, but her tactical analysis had impressed everyone. What if we don't fight them? What if we fight the war itself? The room turned to look at her. Kate stood nervously but continued. Sir, both alien races are stuck in this conflict because neither can afford to lose face. They can't surrender because their entire cultures are built around the war. But what if the war just stopped working? Commander Davis raised an eyebrow. Stopped working how? Think about it like a machine, Kate explained. This war runs on predictable patterns. Supply lines, battle schedules, tactical formations. What if we introduced random elements? Small changes that cascade into bigger problems. Amy was nodding enthusiastically. Chaos theory. Small changes in initial conditions leading to large-scale, unpredictable results. You're talking about sabotage, Admiral Rodriguez said. Not sabotage, Jake corrected. More like creative interference. We don't attack either side directly. We just make their careful plans stop working. General Collins was studying the tactical displays. It's risky. If either side figures out what we're doing, they'll unite against us. Humanity could be wiped out. If we do nothing, we'll be wiped out anyway, Commander Davis pointed out. At least this way, we're taking action. Dr. Watson was already working, on her tablet, pulling up star charts and battle reports. Look at this pattern. Every 47 days, the Zephyrians send a supply convoy through this system. The Korthak always attack at the same point, using the same approach vector. It's like clockwork. What if the convoy arrived early? Kate suggested. Or late? Or what if something blocked their usual route? An asteroid field that wasn't there before, Jake said, understanding. Or electromagnetic interference that disrupts their navigation. Admiral Rodriguez looked around the room. This is insane. You're talking about a handful of human ships trying to manipulate a galactic war. The best kind of insane, General Collins said with a grim smile. The kind that might actually work. Dr. Watson was getting more excited as she worked through the possibilities. We could do it. Our ships are small enough to avoid detection. Both alien races dismiss us as primitives. That's actually an advantage. They won't be looking for subtle interference from us. Commander Davis was already planning. We'd need volunteer crews. This would be incredibly dangerous work. One mistake and our people get caught between two hostile alien fleets. I'll go, Jake said immediately. It was my idea to get involved. I should see it through. You'll need a good crew, Admiral Rodriguez said. People who can think on their feet and adapt to changing situations. I have some recommendations, Jake replied. Tony Martinez is brilliant with technology. Beth Harper handled the alien communications perfectly, and Kate here has the tactical mind we'll need. Lieutenant Kate Johnson looked surprised. Sir, I'm just a junior officer. Who figured out how to fight a war without fighting, Jake pointed out. That makes you exactly what we need. The meeting continued for several more hours as they refined the plan. It was dangerous, probably impossible, and definitely not something any sane military would attempt. But as Admiral Rodriguez pointed out, they weren't dealing with a sane situation. One more thing. Dr. Watson said as the meeting wound down. "We need to be prepared for success. If this actually works, if the war really does start breaking down, both alien races are going to be looking for someone to blame. And they'll probably blame each other," Commander Davis said hopefully. "Maybe," Amy replied. "But if they figure out the truth, humanity will need to be ready for the consequences. We're not just trying to stop a war. We're trying to change the galaxy. That kind of change always comes with a price." As the officials filed out of the room, Jake remained behind with his proposed crew. They had a lot of planning to do and not much time to do it. In 3 weeks, the New Horizon would launch again, but this time they wouldn't be explorers or diplomats. They would be the smallest force in galactic history attempting to stop the largest war anyone had ever seen. The odds were impossible, but then again, humanity had always been good at doing impossible things. 6 months after their return to Earth, Jake Morrison found himself back in space, but this time he wasn't alone. 3 human ships moved through the debris field of what had once been a thriving star system. The New Horizon led the small fleet, followed by the Pioneer under Captain Helen Cruz, and the Pathfinder commanded by Captain Marcus Thompson. To any alien observer, they looked like scavengers. Their ships were deliberately dirty and battered, painted to look like independent traders picking through the wreckage of ancient battles. Hidden beneath the disguise were some of humanity's most advanced sensors and most creative minds. "Contact, bearing 27 Mark IV, announced Beth Harper from her communication station. "Zephyrian supply convoy, right on schedule." Jake smiled grimly. After months of observation, they had mapped the alien battle patterns with mathematical precision. Both sides followed routines so exact that human computers could predict their movements weeks in advance. "Tony, are the charges ready?" Jake asked. Engineer Tony Martinez looked up from his station grinning. "Charges are set and ready, Captain. The asteroids have been hollowed out and filled with compressed gas canisters. When they blow, it'll look like natural outgassing, but the debris field will expand right into the convoy's path." Lieutenant Kate Johnson was monitoring the tactical situation from multiple screens. "Korthak attack force is moving into position. They'll reach the ambush point in 47 minutes, just like always." "Perfect timing," Jake said. "Beth, signal the other ships, execute in 30 seconds. The plan was elegantly simple. For months, the Zephyrian supply convoy had followed the exact same route through this debris field. The Korthak knew this and always set up their ambush at the same location. Today, that predictable pattern was going to work against both of them. "Charges detonated," Tony reported. "Debris field is expanding." On the main screen, Jake watched as dozens of asteroids suddenly vented gas and began tumbling in new directions. To alien sensors, it would look like a natural phenomenon. Old asteroid impacts finally releasing trapped gases. But the result was that the convoy's carefully planned route was now blocked by spinning rocks and chunks of metal. "Zephyrian convoy is changing course," Kate announced. "They're taking the alternate route through Sector 7. "Which puts them right into the Korthak backup ambush position," Jake said with satisfaction. "Except the Korthak don't know the convoy is coming early." The beauty of the plan was that neither side would suspect sabotage. The Zephyrians would think they had cleverly avoided the main Korthak ambush, while the Korthak would assume their enemy had learned about their primary position and switched to the backup plan. "Korthak forces are scrambling," Beth reported. "They're trying to reposition, but they won't make it in time." What happened next was exactly what the humans had hoped. For the Zephyrian convoy sailed through the area where the Korthak ambush should have been, but found empty space. Confused, they began scanning for enemies while the Korthak forces rushed to catch up. When the two sides finally met, they were both out of position and unprepared. The carefully choreographed battle that both sides expected turned into a chaotic mess. Ships collided with debris, weapons missed their targets, and communication systems were jammed by the gas clouds still expanding from the asteroid explosions. "Both sides are taking heavy losses," Kate observed, "but neither side is winning." "That's the point," Jake replied. "We're not trying to help either side win. We're trying to make the war itself stop working." This was the third such operation in 2 weeks. The human ships had been moving through the war zone, introducing small changes that cascaded into major disruptions. A navigation beacon moved slightly to the left, an electromagnetic pulse that interfered with targeting systems, a cloud of metallic chaff that scattered sensor readings. To the aliens, these seemed like random malfunctions or natural phenomena. Space was dangerous after all, and equipment failed sometimes. They had no reason to suspect that a species they considered primitive was systematically undermining their ancient conflict. "Captain," said Sergeant Danny Foster from his engineering station, "I'm picking up chatter on the alien communication channels. Both sides are complaining about unusual technical problems." Danny was a recent addition to the crew, a military engineer who specialized in what he politely called creative problem-solving. His ideas had been responsible for some of their most effective operations. "What kind of problems?" Jake asked. "The Zephyrians are reporting harmonic interference with their crystal formations. Apparently, their weapons keep producing pretty light shows instead of destructive energy beams. The Korthak are complaining that their biological weapons keep evolving in unexpected directions." Jake exchanged glances with Tony Martinez. Those malfunctions were the result of carefully placed quantum interference generators and tailored viruses that the human ships had been deploying for weeks. "Any sign they suspect outside interference?" Kate asked. "No," Danny replied. "They're blaming each other. The Zephyrians think the Korthak have developed new countermeasures. The Korthak believe the Crystal Singers are using some kind of new defensive technology." "Perfect," Jake said. "Let them think their enemies are getting smarter. It'll make them more paranoid and less effective." Captain Helen Cruz's voice came over the communication system from the Pioneer. "Jake, we've got a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up movement from both alien fleets. It looks like they're planning something big." Jake frowned. "Major fleet. Movements weren't part of the usual pattern." "Any idea what they're planning?" "Unknown. But both fleets are converging on the Kepler 442 system. If they meet there, it'll be the largest battle in decades." This was exactly what the humans had been trying to prevent. If both sides committed their full fleets to a massive battle, the destruction would be incredible. Millions would die, and the war would escalate beyond anything seen before. "All ships, change course for Kepler 442, Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." As the three human ships jumped into hyperspace, Jake couldn't help but worry. Their subtle approach had been working, but now it seemed like both alien sides were escalating instead of backing down. Maybe the disruptions had made them desperate rather than cautious. "Kate, start working on contingency plans," he said. "If they're determined to have this battle, we need to figure out how to make sure it's the last one they ever fight." "Yes, sir," Kate replied, already pulling up star charts and tactical projections. "What did you have in mind?" Jake stared at the stars rushing past as they traveled toward what might be the greatest battle in galactic history. "I'm not sure yet, but if we can't stop them from fighting, maybe we can make them too embarrassed to continue." Major Susan Clark's voice came over the secure channel from Earth Command. "All ships be advised. We're tracking massive energy buildups from both alien fleets. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be bigger than anything we've seen before." "Copy that command," Jake replied. "We're moving to intercept." As the human ships raced toward their destination, none of them knew that they were about to attempt the most audacious military operation in human history. They were three small ships heading toward a battle between forces that could destroy star systems. But they had something the aliens didn't expect: the willingness to cheat, lie, and break every rule of honorable warfare. In a galaxy that had forgotten how to think outside the box, humanity was about to remind everyone why unpredictability was the greatest weapon of all. The Kepler 442 system had once been home to 7 beautiful worlds. Now it contained 7 dead rocks and an asteroid belt that sparkled with the remains of ancient civilizations. It was here that both alien fleets had chosen to make their stand, and Jake Morrison was about to witness the largest space battle in 3 centuries. "My God," whispered Beth Harper as the alien fleets came into view. "How many ships are there?" Lieutenant Kate Johnson was running numbers on her tactical display. "Zephyrian fleet shows approximately 800 vessels, ranging from fighters to dreadnoughts. Korthak force is harder to count because their ships keep splitting and merging, but estimate 900 plus. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Nearly 2,000 ships, each one capable of destroying a city. If they fought here, the energy release alone might sterilize half the system. "Sir," said Tony Martinez from his engineering station, "both fleets are broadcasting on all frequencies. It sounds like formal challenges." "Put it through," Jake ordered. Crystal singer Vexithera's harmonic voice filled the bridge. "Korthak Plague, you have violated the sacred borders of Zephyr. Today, the crystal song will purify this system of your corruption forever." War Prime Scraxith's clicking reply followed immediately. "Crystal singers, your light grows dim. Today the swarm will consume your false perfection and add your strength to ours." Both commanders were following scripts that had been written centuries ago. Jake realized this wasn't just a battle. It was a ritual, a ceremony of destruction that both sides needed to perform to maintain their sense of identity. "Captain," said Colonel Barry Scott over the communication system from Earth Command, "we're reading massive energy buildups from both fleets. Whatever they're planning to do, it's going to make their previous battles look like fireworks shows." Jake studied the tactical display. Both fleets were arranging themselves in perfect formation, as if this were a parade instead of a war. The Zephyrians formed elegant geometric patterns that would maximize their energy weapon efficiency. The Korthak spread out in organic clusters that would allow their biological weapons to cover the maximum area. "They're going to destroy each other," Kate said quietly. "Both fleets. This isn't a battle. It's mutual suicide. Not if we have anything to say about it," Jake replied. He turned to Danny Foster, who was monitoring the alien communication channels. "Danny, any sign they've detected us?" "Negative, Captain. We're still reading as space debris on their sensors. They're so focused on each other that they couldn't find us if we painted targets on our hulls." That gave Jake an idea. A crazy, dangerous, absolutely insane idea that just might work. "All ships prepare for emergency maneuvers," he announced. "We're going to put ourselves between the two fleets." The bridge fell silent. Even the normally unflappable Tony Martinez looked shocked. "Sir," Kate said carefully, "that would put us directly in the line of fire from both sides." "Exactly," Jake replied. "Beth, open a channel to both fleet commanders. Full broadcast, all frequencies." "Channel open, sir." Jake took a deep breath. What he was about to do would either end the war or get them all killed in the next few minutes. "Crystal Singer, Vexithera, War Prime Scraxith, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel New Horizon. You both demanded we choose a side in your war. Well, we've made our choice. We choose neither of you." The response was immediate and outraged. Both alien commanders began speaking at once, their voices overlapping in a symphony of fury. "Human. Insects!" Scraxith clicked angrily. "You dare interfere in affairs beyond your understanding. Primitive creatures." Vexithera's crystals chimed with rage. "Your presence defiles this sacred ritual of cleansing." "We're not here to fight," Jake continued calmly. "We're here to show you something. For the past 6 months, human ships have been operating in your war zone. Every major battle, every supply convoy, every random malfunction you've experienced, that was us." The alien communications channels fell silent. Jake could almost feel their shock across the emptiness of space. "Impossible," Vexthara finally said. "Your technology is primitive. You lack the capability for such operations." "Do we?" Jake asked. "Tony, show them the evidence." On every screen in both alien fleets, footage began playing. Human ships placing charges in asteroid fields. Human engineers installing quantum interference generators on Zephyrian crystals. Human biologists releasing modified viruses that turned Korthak weapons into harmless light shows. "You see," Jake continued, "while you've been fighting the same war for 300 years, we've been studying you, learning your patterns, exploiting your weaknesses. Every glorious battle you fought in the past 6 months has been carefully orchestrated by beings you consider inferior." War Prime. Scraxith was the first to recover from the shock. "Lies, Korthak sensors would have detected such interference. Your sensors were programmed to look for energy weapons and biological threats, Danny Foster said, joining the conversation. We used kinetic devices, chemical reactions, and good old-fashioned mechanical engineering. Technologies so primitive, you forgot they existed. Captain Helen Cruz added her voice from the Pioneer. Every time your crystal formations produced pretty lights instead of death rays, that was us. Every time your biological weapons evolved into something harmless, that was us too. The aliens were beginning to understand the scope of what had happened. For months, their ancient and supposedly glorious war had been manipulated by creatures they considered barely capable of spaceflight. But why? Vexathera asked, her harmonic voice now uncertain. What do humans gain from this deception? We gain a galaxy that isn't destroying itself, Jake replied. Dr. Watson, would you like to explain? Dr. Amy Watson's recorded voice began, playing across both fleets. She had prepared this presentation weeks ago, anticipating this moment. Analysis of your war shows that both civilizations will be extinct within 50 years if the conflict continues. You've destroyed 17 star systems, killed trillions of beings, and consumed the resources of half the galaxy. And for what? Neither of you can even remember why you started fighting. Images flashed across the alien screen showing the true cost of their war. Dead worlds, refugee populations, entire species driven to extinction by the endless conflict. The original dispute was over mining rights to a system you destroyed in the first decade of fighting. Amy's voice continued. You're killing yourselves over something that no longer exists. The truth hit both alien fleets like a physical blow. Their great and glorious war, the conflict that defined their entire civilizations, was based on nothing more than pride and habit. This cannot be, Scraxith said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yet it is, Vexathara replied, her crystals now glowing with what might have been shame. Jake seized the moment. You have a choice. You can continue this pointless war until you're both extinct, or you can find a better way. Your energy manipulation technology and their biological expertise could rebuild every world you've destroyed. You could create paradise instead of spreading death. And if we refuse? Scraxith asked. Then you'll have to go through us first, Jake said firmly. 3 human ships against 2 alien fleets. We can't win, but we can make sure that this battle becomes the most embarrassing defeat in galactic history. The great warrior races, stopped by primitives and garbage scows. Captain Marcus Thompson's voice came from the Pathfinder. Besides, we've already proven we can make your weapons malfunction. How do you know they'll work properly in this battle? As if summoned by his words, alarm signals began sounding on ships throughout both fleets. Navigation systems started reporting errors. Weapon targeting systems began drifting off course. Communication arrays picked up phantom signals. What's happening? Both alien commanders demanded. Insurance, Jake said with a smile. We've had months to plant surprises throughout your fleets. Right now, your ship's computers are having some very interesting conversations with programs we wrote. Nothing permanent, nothing destructive, but I wouldn't count on your weapons working correctly today. The great battle that was supposed to decide the fate of the galaxy had turned into a farce. The most advanced military forces in known space had been outsmarted by a handful of humans using technology their ancestors had abandoned. You have a choice, Jake repeated. End this war and start rebuilding, or be remembered as the civilizations that were defeated by beings you considered primitive. In the silence that followed, everyone waited to see which path the galaxy would choose. The silence stretched across space for what felt like hours. 2 massive alien fleets hung motionless in the void, their commanders wrestling with a truth that shattered everything they had believed about themselves and their war. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the tactical displays and waiting. His small ship floated between forces that could destroy solar systems. But for this moment, he held all the power. The power of truth. Crystal singer Vexathera was the first to speak, her harmonic voice now carrying notes of something that might have been sadness. 300 years. 300 years of death and destruction, and we cannot even remember the true cause. The cause was honor, War Prime Scraxith replied, but his clicking voice lacked conviction. The Zephyrian expansion into Korthak space demanded response. What expansion? Dr. Amy Watson's voice cut through both fleets' communication channels. She was speaking live now from the human research vessel that had arrived during the standoff. We've analyzed the historical records from both your species. The expansion was a single mining operation on an uninhabited world, a world that both sides agreed was in disputed territory. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez added her voice from the Earth, fleet that had been approaching secretly for hours. You've been killing each other for 3 centuries because neither side was willing to admit they might have been wrong about a mining claim. The truth was devastating in its simplicity. The greatest war in galactic history had been fought over pride, not principle. Both civilizations had locked themselves into a cycle of violence that had consumed their futures. But our cultures, Vexithera said weakly, our entire way of life is built around this conflict. The young ones know no other purpose. Then teach them a new purpose, Jake said firmly. Your crystal technology could turn dead worlds into gardens. Their biological expertise could restore extinct species. Instead of creating death, you could create life. War Prime Scraxith's mandibles clicked nervously. The warrior castes will not accept such change. They will see peace as weakness, surrender as dishonor. Then don't call it peace, suggested Lieutenant Kate Johnson. Call it a new kind of war. A war against the destruction you've caused. A campaign to rebuild instead of destroy. Commander Rick Davis, monitoring the situation from Earth, added his tactical expertise. Both your species have spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Now use those same skills to perfect the art of creation. The aliens were silent again, but Jake could see activity on their ships. Heated discussions were taking place on both sides as the implications of the human revelation sank in. There is another problem, Vexithara finally admitted. Not all among our people will accept this truth. The war singers have made this conflict their religion. They will fight to continue it. The death swarms feel the same, Scraxith agreed. They have tasted too much blood to accept peace. They will call this human trickery and demand we resume the old ways. Jake had been expecting this. That's why we're proposing something different. Not peace between your species, but cooperation. Against a common enemy, the fanatics on both sides who want to keep the war going. Captain Helen Cruz's voice came from the Pioneer. We've been monitoring communications from both your home worlds. Extremist factions are already mobilizing. They're planning to override your commands and launch planet-killing weapons at each other's core worlds. The news hit both alien commanders like a physical blow. The idea that their own people would commit genocide rather than accept peace was almost too horrible to contemplate. How long do we have? Vexithera asked. 48 hours before the extremist fleets reach firing position, reported Tony Martinez from his sensor station. After that, both your civilizations could be extinct within days. Jake made a decision that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. We'll help you stop them. Human ships can coordinate between your fleets while you deal with the extremists. Our technology may be primitive, but we've proven we can be creative. You would risk your small fleet to help us? Scraxith asked, surprised. We're not helping you, Jake corrected. We're helping the galaxy. If your extremists succeed, the war will spread to every inhabited system. Eventually, it would reach Earth. What followed was the strangest alliance in galactic history. Zephyrian and Korthak ships working together for the first time in 3 centuries, coordinated by human vessels that served as neutral intermediaries. The battle against the extremists was swift and decisive. The fanatics had expected to fight their ancient enemies using familiar tactics. They were not prepared to face a combined force using strategies developed by beings they had never considered a threat. The Zephyrian war singers found their crystal formations disrupted by Korthak biological agents that had been modified to enhance rather than destroy. The Korthak death swarms discovered their living weapons neutralized by Zephyrian energy fields calibrated to heal rather than harm. Most importantly, human ships coordinated the entire operation, ensuring that former enemies could work together without old instincts taking over. Extremist forces neutralized. reported Captain Marcus Thompson from the Pathfinder. Both faction leaders are in custody. The real work began after the fighting ended. On a neutral space station that had once been a Zephyrian outpost, representatives from both species met to formally end their war. Jake Morrison stood between Crystal Singer Vexthara and War Prime Scraxith as they signed the document that would reshape the galaxy. The Terran Accords, Ambassador Rachel Kim announced as she witnessed the signing. She had arrived from Earth specifically for this moment. The first treaty between the Zephyrian Collective and the Korthak Empire, mediated by the Human Systems Alliance. The terms were simple but revolutionary. Both species would dedicate their military technology to restoration projects. Zephyrian energy manipulation would power the regrowth of dead worlds, while Korthak biological expertise would restore extinct ecosystems. Human ships would serve as neutral observers, ensuring that old hostilities didn't resurface. What of our warriors? Scraxith asked. They have known only battle for generations. Then let them battle the greatest enemy of all, Dr. Watson suggested. Let them fight entropy, extinction, and the death of worlds. Let them wage war against the damage their ancestors caused. Vexthara's crystals chimed with what might have been hope. A war to create rather than destroy. A campaign of healing rather than harm. As the ceremony concluded, Jake found himself standing at an observation window, watching the former enemy fleets begin their new mission. Zephyrian crystal ships were already heading toward dead systems, their energy weapons recalibrated to restart dying suns. Korthak bioships followed, carrying the seeds of new life to barren worlds. Do you think it will work? Asked Beth Harper, joining him at the window. The peace treaty? Jake considered the question carefully. Maybe. They'll need time to overcome 3 centuries of hatred. There will be setbacks, probably some fighting as old habits surface. But, Beth prompted. But they've seen what they really are, Jake replied. Not glorious warriors fighting for noble causes, but children fighting over toys in a sandbox while the playground burned around them. That kind of revelation changes people. Colonel Barry Scott's voice came over the communication system. Captain Morrison, you have an incoming message from Earth Command. Admiral Rodriguez wants to speak with you personally. When the Admiral's image appeared on screen, she was smiling. Jake, the Global Council has officially established the Galactic Mediation Service. Congratulations, you're our first director. Jake looked around at his crew. Tony with his creative engineering solutions, Kate with her tactical brilliance, Beth with her gift for communication, Danny with his talent for creative problem-solving. They had started as explorers and become peacemakers. What's our mission, he asked. Simple, Admiral Rodriguez replied. Keep the peace, monitor the restoration projects, and if any other species in the galaxy decides to start a war they can't finish, show them what humanity learned in the Kepler 442 system. Which is, sometimes the smallest force can have the greatest impact, especially when that force refuses to play by the rules everyone else takes for granted. As the New Horizon prepared to depart on its new mission, Jake took one last look at the space station where former enemies were planning their joint restoration projects. In the distance, the first of the dead worlds was already beginning to show signs of life as Zephyrian energy and Korthak biology worked together to heal what centuries of war had destroyed. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as a tiny, primitive species with obsolete technology, but they were leaving as the force that had ended the galaxy's greatest war, not through superior firepower, but through the simple willingness to think differently. The war that couldn't be stopped had finally ended, not with the victory of one side over another, but with the realization that there were better ways to use their strength than destroying each other. And in the years that followed, when other species asked how humanity had accomplished such an impossible task, the answer was always the same. They cheated, lied, broke every rule of honorable warfare, and absolutely refused to let the galaxy destroy itself over ancient pride.